That night, when the sky looked like it was bleeding, turning everything red and heavy with silence, Caden Thorne felt the ground shake beneath his boots, like the earth itself was waking up from a deep, ancient nightmare. He was alone, standing right at the edge of the bleeding ruins, a place that held way more than broken stones. It kept buried secrets, whispers of a dark past. The air was thick, almost alive, like the land was breathing right under his feet. And when his hand touched that living stone, the Scarlet Echo, a flood of memories hit him out of nowhere, like someone unlocked a door inside his soul. But the crazy part? Those memories weren't even his. The resonance was way too strong to ignore, pounding in his chest like a drum full of stories he'd never lived, but somehow felt deep in his bones. Caden had no idea his touch would awaken something the whole world had been trying to keep buried. In one moment, he became a target, hunted by the Empire of Ylhara, branded as a threat, a traitor, someone who dared to challenge the silence and ruin their order was built on. He was marked not just by a legacy he barely understood, but by the sacrifice that seemed to come with it. He could feel it in his veins, that invisible chain pulling him toward a fate he never asked for. The night closed in around him, thick with shadows whispering his name as he ran, the ruins echoing with every step he took. He knew deep down there was no running from this. Not now. The Scarlet Echo had tied him to something old and powerful, a force that demanded answers, maybe even redemption. The Empire didn't just want his head. They wanted to wipe the Echo off the map, terrified of what waking it up might mean for the twisted future they were trying to build. In the pause between breaths, Caden felt his soul tearing in two. One side gripped by fear, the other fired up with the kind of courage only a true guardian could carry. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was the beginning of something bitter. A journey that would shake everything. A journey full of pain, sacrifice, but yeah, also hope. Caden didn't know it yet, but that one touch, that single moment with the living stone, had just started a ripple that would flip the whole world upside down. And with the weight of ruin on his back and the Empire breathing down his neck, he chose to keep going. Not as some victim, but as a hero in the making, ready to face whatever the Echo threw his way. The whispers in the ruins weren't just warnings. They were a challenge, a dare, and with that, destiny had already begun to right itself. The night felt endless as Caden Thorne, heart pounding and face covered in sand, made his way across the Khal-Naim desert. The scorching heat from the day had cooled into a sharp, icy wind that cut right through him, carrying this weird hum, like the ground itself was singing some kind of ancient sorrow. Every step on the cracked earth stirred something. A whisper buried in the dunes, the live resonance of the ruins he'd touched. Caden wasn't just some relic hunter anymore. Now he was carrying a weight the Empire of Ylhara would do anything to erase. He felt it, every shadow watching him, every step like a trap about to snap. The longer he walked, the more that feeling grew. He wasn't imagining things. The Scarlet Echo, that living, breathing force, felt like it had a mind of its own. And it wasn't just watching. It wanted something. Justice? Vengeance? Maybe forgiveness. Whatever it was, Caden was the key. He could feel those ancient memories pounding in his chest again, like the past itself was using him to speak. The Empire was gearing up to take him down, throwing everything they had at him. And that desert? It wasn't just a wasteland anymore. It had become a maze of memories, a space where time bent and blurred and refused to let him forget the cost tied to his bloodline. Then came Lyra Vex, out of nowhere, A shadow sorceress with eyes like burnt-out stars, bringing that mix of danger and mystery that said, "Don't mess with me," loud and clear. She barely spoke, but her presence hit hard, cold, sharp, and wise. Lyra knew stuff. The kind of deep, dark truth about the Scarlet Echo most couldn't even imagine. To her, it wasn't just some ancient relic, it was alive. A fierce pact with the wreckage of fallen civilizations, something powerful enough to either wreck or save everything. Their paths crossing wasn't random. She had her reasons. But somewhere along the way, Caden gave her something to believe in again. Something to fight for, even if the price of that fight would be way more than either of them was ready to pay. Then, just when it felt like things couldn't get more intense, Fenix Dre showed up, like a ghost pulled from the ruins themselves. A warrior with no clear memories, just raw instinct, silent rage, and this dark energy boiling under his skin. He didn't ask questions. He just followed. Caden and Lyra might have been walking targets, but Fenix, ... He was a storm in chains. Underneath that steel glare, there was something buried, a connection to the Echo. Like pieces of it were tangled up in his past too. Together, they made one hell of a trio. Each broken in their own way, each carrying secrets, scars, and choices they couldn't take back. And still, they kept moving forward through a world cracking under the weight of truths that were never supposed to resurface. Every city they hit, the Scarlet Echo reacted in weird, wild ways. Shadows twisting along the walls, whispers in the dust, stories bleeding out of the ruins, like the ground itself remembered everything. The past wasn't dead. It was watching. Breathing. Waiting. Caden started to realize he wasn't just some fugitive or treasure hunter. He was a damn guardian now. Someone meant to face down those living echoes, to step into the mistakes that shaped the world and fight like hell not to repeat them. The road ahead was brutal. Constant danger. The Empire never backed off. They sent wave after wave of trackers and assassins, trying to shut this whole thing down before it got out of control. Every fight tested them. Not just physically, but deep in their souls. And still, Caden, Lyra, and Fenix pushed forward. Painful lessons were piling up. Lyra, with her sharp wisdom, made it clear that the Crimson Echo wasn't just a curse. It was a resonance that could reveal deep truths about who they were and what they carried inside. She explained that the Echo's power was also a mirror, reflecting the shadows of the past, so they could better understand the present and maybe, just maybe, rewrite the future. As they moved through a forest, where the trees seemed to whisper ancient secrets, Caden felt the weight of his bloodline grow heavier with every step. He was the last link in a lineage marked by original sin, a sacrifice he never asked for but couldn't run from anymore. Every step was a battle against the very essence of the Echo, a constant fight to not lose himself to the voices that threatened to drown out his identity. Desperation and determination collided in a painful harmony that echoed in his chest, forcing him to ask the question he feared the most. Was he a hunter, a traitor, or something far greater? Each night, Caden's dreams brought more pieces of that dark past. He saw forgotten wars, broken oaths, and faces he'd never known, but who somehow begged him to understand. It was like the Crimson Echo wanted him to carry the weight of ruin, to face the sacrifice his entire lineage had borne in silence. But buried deep in all that darkness, he also saw hope, a spark flickering in the shadows, hinting that maybe this power could be used for something greater, something that could restore what was lost and finally break the cycle of destruction. When the Empire finally caught up to them on a plain stained red by the sunset, Caden had to make a choice that would define everything. Face death or embrace the Crimson Echo, accepting his heritage with all its consequences. That moment was all about breaking through. Redemption. It was when the hunter stopped being just another victim of history and stepped into the role of the hero who could finally change his fate. There was no running anymore. No more pretending. The pulse in his veins wasn't calling him toward a destiny bigger than anything he'd imagined. So as the sun disappeared below the horizon, Caden, Lyra, and Phoenix prepared for the next step in their brutal journey. They knew the truth they were chasing wouldn't come easy, and that the resonance of ancient echoes would bring more pain, more sacrifice, and more revelations. But deep inside, Caden could feel it now. This living force inside him, the Crimson Echo, was the key to turning ruin into hope. To rewriting a story that seemed doomed to repeat itself. And that night, as the stars started to shine overhead, the Echo Hunter was finally ready to face whatever came next. The thick morning mist hadn't even cleared when Caden, Lyra, and Phoenix reached the forgotten underground city of Valdris. It was one of the last lost strongholds of the old empire of Ilhara, now a dark maze of buried secrets, untouched by sunlight. The walls, covered in faded inscriptions, seemed to whisper lost tales, echoes from a time when magic was both a gift and a curse. Caden felt the weight of each step, like the ruin itself was whispering directly to his soul, revealing truths that many had tried to erase, but now demanded to be seen. As they moved deeper into the darkened corridors, the Crimson Echo pulsed so strongly it was almost unbearable, like it was reacting to something hidden in the depths of that forgotten city. Lyra, using her arcane knowledge, recognized ancient symbols that spoke of a dark power, a sacrifice made centuries ago to seal forces that should have never been set free. The truth hit hard. The Empire of Ilhara hadn't fallen by chance. It fell in secret war, a battle against hidden forces that nearly consumed the entire world. And Caden, he wasn't just a hunter of echoes. He was part of this endless cycle of destruction and hope. Phoenix, always sharp and alert, could feel the danger creeping through every shadow. His presence was more than just muscle. It was a shield against the despair that kept clawing at their exhausted minds. When they found a sealed chamber, covered in runes glowing deep red, it felt like the very heart of ruin was pulsing, waiting to reveal its darkest secret. Caden reached out, feeling the echo shiver through his fingers as a flood of visions crashed into his mind. Ancient battles, broken oaths, and the full price of the sacrifice his bloodline had paid. But these memories weren't just stories. They were buried truths, ones that shattered everything Caden thought he knew about himself and his role in the world's fate. The Crimson Echo was a fragment of an ancient guardian's essence, a protector who gave everything to seal away a far greater threat, Azrael, the Soul Devourer. A being that didn't just destroy bodies, but swallowed hope, light, and even time itself. Caden realized his journey wasn't about survival anymore. It was about reclaiming that forgotten legacy, facing the coming eclipse, and stopping the ruin before it became irreversible. But that revelation also brought a new kind of fear. Lyra, who'd always seemed like a steady ally, revealed she carried secrets that could tip the balance of the coming war. Her past was tied to Azrael in ways even she didn't fully understand. The tension between them rose, not from a lack of trust, but from the crushing weight of truth and the dread of what was coming. Caden felt the dilemma of every true guardian, to protect those he loved while standing against the darkness closing in, knowing that the cost might be higher than any of them were ready to pay. Ilhara's empire knew how important those ruins were, and they were closing in fast with a force that could crush mountains. The tension between past and present exploded into a clash that felt like a deadly dance. Caden and his crew had to throw everything they had into the fight, going up against trained warriors and dark magic. The Scarlet Echo wasn't just channeling power anymore, it was carrying the hope that kept their resistance alive. Every swing, every blast was a fight against fate itself. It was a battle to bring back the balance. Right in the middle of all that chaos, Caden had a vision, clear as day. A future where he didn't face Azrael as some lone hunter, but as a true hero who finally understood what sacrifice and redemption really meant. He saw a way to break the whole cycle of ruin, to flip the script and turn those hidden forces into allies. He saw a shot at bringing back what everyone thought was lost forever. Hope that once felt like it was hanging by a thread was now a blazing fire. And that fire was fueled by the bravery of the people standing with him and the legacy that pulsed through his blood. But if he was going to make that future real, Caden knew he had to face the darkest part of himself, his fears, his doubts, and all the choices that could cost him everything. He stood at a crossroads, and every step forward could mean salvation or destruction, sacrifice or redemption. As the walls of the ruin shook from the battle outside, the guardian inside him finally woke up. Caden wasn't just an echo hunter anymore. He was the last shot they had to stop the darkness from swallowing the whole world. With that truth hitting him hard, Caden, Lyra, and Phoenix pulled themselves together for whatever was coming next. They knew the road ahead would be brutal, packed with ancient secrets that had pushed them to the edge. But the Scarlet Echo kept calling them, a living heartbeat that tied them to sacrifice, destiny, and something way bigger than themselves. So, with their hearts pounding, they took that first step into the unknown, ready to stare down the darkness and turn ruin into something new. The sun had barely started to break through the night when Caden, Lyra, and Phoenix climbed out of the ruins of Valdris. The weight of everything they just discovered was still fresh in their heads and hearts. With every step, Caden felt the Scarlet Echo getting stronger in his veins, a live connection to the ancient legacy that used to feel like nothing more than a bedtime story. It was like the blood of those old guardians was flowing through him now, waking up something that had been sleeping for way too long. A power strong enough to flip the whole fate of the world on its head. But waking up that legacy wasn't gonna be free. The Empire's forces were getting bigger and meaner, with shadow armies rolling in to crush hope before it even had a chance to rise. Caden knew everything he loved was hanging by a thread, and this sacrifice they were all walking toward might be the only thing standing between survival and the end. Every step forward was a choice, to give in to the darkness or keep fighting with everything they had, carrying the flame of resistance through the eclipse, trying to kill the light. That's when Lyra dropped some heavy truths, stuff that balanced on a razor-thin line between redemption and betrayal. Her powers had been waking up slowly, but now they were fully alive, and she wasn't running from them anymore. She'd accepted the legacy she once feared, and in doing that, she became something more. Her transformation was proof of what sacrifice asks from people, to face the unknown head-on, to protect the ones who still had hope. Phoenix, always the unshakable protector, took on his role as their shield and sword, ready to risk it all so Caden could finish what he started. The bond between them was solid, strong enough to take on even the darkest forces out there. Deep inside the Forbidden Forest, they stumbled on what was left of the old Temple of the Guardians of the Bond, a sacred spot where the keys of destiny were said to be hidden. These keys were supposed to unlock the true power of the Scarlet Echo. The air there buzzed with ancient energy, like time itself had frozen to witness what was about to happen. Caden felt the legacy pulling at him, demanding courage, wisdom, and a sacrifice that could change not just his life, but the fate of humanity. The deeper they went into the temple, the harder it got, physically and mentally. Visions from the past hit them like waves. Old battles, regrets, losses, all of it meant to test their spirit. Caden was forced to face the stuff that haunted him, his failures, his fears, the doubt eating away at him. And that's when he finally got it. Real power doesn't come from brute strength. It comes from beating your own darkness, from turning pain into fuel, from standing back up even when everything inside you says to quit. In a chamber lit by this eerie red glow, Caden finally found it, the first key of destiny. It was this ancient relic, covered in symbols that seemed to hum and sync with his soul. The second he touched it, a shock of energy ripped through him. Flashbacks, glimpses of what had been and what could still be rushed through his mind. He saw the sacrifices that had been made to protect this legacy, and realized it was his turn now. His mission wasn't just about fighting. It was about becoming the bridge between the hidden forces and the hope that could save the world. But that little victory? It didn't last long. Outside, the Empire's forces had locked onto their location, and the noose was tightening. The sound of boots, weapons, and war drums echoed like a warning. The fight was coming. Caden felt the weight of it all pressing on his chest, destiny breathing down his neck. It was now or never. Time to either fold or fight like hell. Time to embrace the sacrifice and carry that legacy all the way to the end. Caden could finally awaken in full power and take on the darkness that threatened everything good and right. Lyra, with her steely gaze, promised she wouldn't let Caden face that fate alone, even if it meant battling her own demons. Phoenix, steady as ever, was gearing up for the fight, the Guardian ready to protect the rebirth of a hope that seemed fragile, but beat strong in each of their hearts. The future hung in the balance, and the coming battle would be the real test of the legacy waking up inside them. So, standing on the edge between ruin and redemption, Caden took his first step into what was next. An epic battle that would decide not just his fate, but the fate of every world tied by the Scarlet Echo. Sacrifice, legacy, and hope all came crashing down that night, setting the stage for a showdown where darkness and light would collide in a dance of life and death, with Caden's heart pounding strong as the last guardian of an uncertain future. The whole sky seemed on fire as night fell over the Therian Valley. Stars vanished behind swirling black clouds, like the universe itself was bracing for the end. The fortress of Varnak, the last wall between the living world and the eclipse's darkness, shook under the weight of the Hidden Forces' armies. The Empire had called its corrupted champions, monsters forged from despair and pain, to crush any spark of resistance. In the heart of the battlefield, Caden stood firm, the key of destiny in his hand, the Scarlet Echo burning like live fire through his body. This was it. No turning back now. The legacy had awakened, and now it had to fight to survive. The wall fell. The ground shook. War cries rolled like thunder through the hills. Phoenix led the last sentinels of the dawn with wild bravery, cutting down monsters even as his own blood stained his cloak. Lyra weaved through shadows with her ancient magic, casting seals of light that burned corruption and stopped demons from breaking the last line. They fought for Caden, for the world, for hope. And with his heart racing, Caden knew the sacrifice coming wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. The kind of sacrifice that changes who you are. At the Citadel's peak, where winds howled like old ghosts, Caden faced Azrael. The Soul Devourer, once human, now wore a body made of shadows and rotted bones, eyes glowing like two bloody eclipses. There, in that forgotten place, legacy and ruin would finally clash. No audience, just fate watching silently. Azrael smirked with arrogance, mocking the weakness of a kid daring to carry the hope of ages. But Caden wasn't a kid anymore. He was the heir to ancient sacrifices, the bearer of the last Scarlet echo. The fight blew up like a storm. Azrael's strikes tore through the air, twisting reality around them. Every step Caden took demanded more strength than he thought he had left. But with every block, every dodge, every counter, the legacy inside him shone brighter. The voices of old guardians whispered in his mind, guiding his moves, strengthening his soul. He wasn't alone. Never was. The sacrifice of so many had brought him here. He was the last link, but also the first of a new cycle. In one final act of courage, Caden slammed the key of destiny into the sacred ground of the Citadel, unleashing a wave of energy so pure even the heavens trembled. The light swept across the battlefield, wiping out the hidden forces and breaking the chains tying Azrael to the mortal realm. But the cost was brutal. Caden got swallowed by the wave, trapped between worlds, his soul hanging on the edge between existence and oblivion. His body fell, sure, but the legacy took root. In the world, in the people, in hope. And that's when the real rebirth began. Lyra rushed to him, tears already falling before she even saw if he was breathing. Phoenix dropped to his knees beside her, armor broken, soul shattered. But when they touched Caden's chest, they felt it. A heartbeat. Weak, but alive. The spark was still burning. He had won. Not by destroying the ruin, but by healing the crack in the world with his own sacrifice. The old sentinels were gone, but something new was born there. Caden opened his eyes, scarlet mark glowing in his iris. He had crossed the veil and come back as the guardian of rebirth. In the days that followed, the survivors rebuilt what they could. Fields bloomed again. The sky cleared up, and the echoes of the past started fading, replaced by songs of hope. The fortress of Varnock became a sanctuary for new guardians, and Caden Voss's name was carved in stone as a symbol of courage, sacrifice, and rebirth. The legacy was eternal now. Not tied to blood or lineage, but to the choice to fight when all seemed lost. Caden chose to live far from thrones and glory. He preferred quiet forests and calm rivers. But wherever he went, people recognized him. Not by face, but by the fire in his eyes. And whenever someone asked if the ruin would ever come back, he just smiled and said it didn't matter. As long as there was a spark of courage in someone's heart, the legacy would never die. So even with deep scars and memories that would never fade, Caden moved forward. Not as a hero, but as a man who chose to do the impossible. Who stared down the eclipse and reignited the last light. If you dug this story, don't forget to drop a comment, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for more stories like this. Catch you in the next video.